What in
Welcome, Queens, to another episode. I actually have a real life queen with me today, all the way from Australia. I have with me a special guest, Kimberly Spencer, and I'm going to read her bio to you and then let her introduce herself. So, Kimberly is an award winning high performance, trauma informed coach and trainer. Amazon best-selling co-author, international motivational speaker, and the founder of crownyourself.com. Kimberly helps visionary leaders transform their self-limiting stories, build their empire, stand out fearlessly, and make the income and impact they deserve. What a queen. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you and to share this space, queen to queen.
I love that. Thank you. I have 10 quick fire questions for you to get us both warmed up. So are you ready to go for it?
Let's do it.
All right. Number one, 3 things you love.
Oh, my husband, my son, and my other son. Easy.
That was easy. Number 2, do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you live by?
Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Between stimulus and response, there is a choice. And pretty much anything written by Viktor Frankl. He called the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances the last of our human freedoms. And that is probably one of my favorite quotes. It was one that I shared in my TEDx talk that ability is really our superpower, to be able to see the world through the lens of how we choose.
Wow, that is very powerful. I love that one. Number 3, if you could describe self-love in 3 words, what words would they be?
Compassion, grace, and forgiveness.
Love them. What is your favorite thing about coaching?
My favorite thing about coaching is challenging. Like, I feel like my entire history really prepared me to do what I do now, which is really challenging because I love challenging with the client's vision of their potential. And some of my clients have said that I can sometimes see where they want to be even before they can. And I think that as a coach, when you can challenge someone to hold them to that higher standard of what they desire, of who they desire to become to achieve that thing that they want to achieve or receive in their world, that if you when you see someone as that, you're seeing their light, you're seeing their superpower, you're seeing who they can be, you're seeing their potential, which is the power of coaching.
Oh, yes, what a great explanation. You're holding the higher vision for themselves and holding it for them, even if they quite might not be able to see it quite yet, but you have that belief there. That's everything.
It's
Yeah.
sometimes so hard when you're in the thick of your stuff to be able to see the forest from the trees and just how close you actually are.
Yeah. What's the next question is what's the most challenging thing you find about coaching?
Surrendering that I am not responsible for my clients' results, that I am a results driven person. I love seeing my clients achieve transformation. I love seeing them get it. I love the breakthroughs. And I can bring 100% of my skills, my time, my presence, my energy to the sessions, to the work.
Mhm.
They also have to bring 100% of choosing and deciding and to transform. They also have to 100% of theirs. I can't take any of their responsibility to transform. That's on them.
Yeah. What you put in, you get out, right?
100%.
Yes. Okay, so the next question is I want you to finish this sentence. So, to bring myself back into the present moment, I.
Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and just acknowledge where I am, accepting that where I am is exactly where I'm supposed to be instead of where I think I should be, and be in that space of just embodied with breath and feeling that. That
Mm.
brings me back to center where I'm like, okay, we can now we can move because we're actually in the race. When you're shooting yourself, you're not even in the race. You're in a perception or in an illusion of where you think you should be or could be or would be if something hadn't happened. Breath will always bring you back into that present moment, accepting the reality of what is, and also acknowledging, sometimes our fears of things that could happen even 5 minutes from now aren't necessarily going to come true. So that breath can, and reminding myself of, I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm here. I'm present. Things are pretty damn good. So we're all good.
Wow, love that. Number 7, what's your favorite food?
Favorite food, steak. Steak. I, yeah, my husband cooks that like 3 times a week.
Do you like it? How do you like it cooked?
I don't, how he ever he cooks, I don't. I burn water. I just learned how to steam broccoli properly. He does all the cooking. He loves cooking. He is actually like the reason that we got to stay in Australia is we switched our visa from being a visitor to being on a student visa, and he went to school and is going to school for chef to become a chef because he's always wanted to just master the craft of cooking. And like, I'll eat your homework. I'm good with that.
That's awesome. I would love that. Okay, number 8, weights or cardio?
Cardio. Cardio queen. I am a marathon runner. I'm working into sixth, seventh marathon. I love cardio. I don't like weights. I do love Pilates. I was a Pilates instructor for 13 years. So low weight, 5 pounds or less. I love weights and resisting, but not like I'm not looking to bench 150. I'm good.
Wow, 6, did you say 6 marathons or 7 marathons you've done?
I think I've done 6 marathons and I'm going for my seventh.
Wow, I did one
I know
and
I've
that
at least
was
done five. Yeah, I love running. It's meditative for me
mm,
when my body is in alignment and feeling good. When it's out of alignment, sucks. So I balance the running with Pilates and yoga in order to be able to have the parasympathetic activation and alignment and have the running. So I've just recently, because I just maybe 4 months ago, so I'm just getting back into running and it feels so good.
wow, that's
And
epic.
also challenging.
Yes. The number 9, the best question you've ever been asked.
What do you want?
Ooh.
Super simple. But
Mm.
what do you want? It is a stumper of a question for most people. And I have had to consciously and actively train my brain to focus on what I want and what I really want. What do you want? Not what does your industry say you should want or, what you feel or believe that you should want. What do you actually want? Like what ignites your soul on fire? What makes you excited to get up out of bed every day? What do you actually want?
What a great question. So, the last question is, if you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Joan of Arc. I would love to understand how she thought. I mean, for being a woman in her time who eventually was burned at the stake, but
Mm,
what she heard and felt and how she like went into battle, leading people, that is extraordinary. And the fact that she was able to do that and have some sort of spiritual guidance or connection and be open about that, I would love to understand more about how she thought.
Yeah, wow. And Kimberly, I've read through your story and you've been through a hell of a lot and you have a great story to share. So can you share with our listeners how you've become the queen that you are today? And of course, in between, I'm sure I'll have a lot of natural questions to ask you as you share your story.
Absolutely. Yeah. My story is not linear by any means. So and I don't think anybody's really is.
Mhm.
I found that I prefer to make my own mold rather than to conform to someone else's. But it took me a long time and a long history of conformity because I grew up in a household with an addict. And so growing up with that, I learned how to adapt my personality to make it be what someone would accept or what I believe someone would love. And through that, it made me choose very poor romantic partners. It made me not really love myself. I wasn't being truthful. And so I battled for 10 years with bulimia. And the one thing that I always was open and honest about was always my career. And so I started out thinking the only model that I had growing up in Los Angeles was for a career that made the impact that I wanted to make and the income that I wanted to make. Because I always grew up with a deep desire to make a difference and to make a lot of money doing it. And to do both. I never saw money as bad. I grew up like, even though my dad was an addict and my mom was a codependent, I saw them build a company for 30 years into a multi-million dollar company, starting out from nothing. And so that experience, and I saw their tenacity and their hustle, and I always loved creating stories. So I thought that growing up in Hollywood would the entertainment industry would be where I would land. And so I focused my energy and attention on that. When I graduated high school, I had two scholarships to go to arts college, and I dropped out 2 weeks before I was supposed to start because I found this amazing acting class that my dad actually he was a customer of my dad. And my parents were always super supportive of my career choices, and they always knew that I was very tenacious and audacious with my when it came to career. When it came to other things, like I would kind of like hide in the background. When it came to my ambitions, I always set myself up to be an ambitious person. And I think that's because growing up, I thought that maybe if I achieved enough, then my dad would stop drinking. Then I wouldn't. Then maybe if I changed, then he would change. And that's not necessarily true. I had to change by establishing some boundaries. But what happened is I found this acting class. And I remember the moment getting accepted into this class where Ashley Judd trained and Sean Astin and James Franco, and I got the syllabus. And as like a straight A student, I was totally gonna buy all the books on this list, like books on Hollywood and Meisner acting and Adler and different forms of acting studies. But in this big box, there was one book and said, "This is the most important book you will ever read." And I was like, "What's this?" And so I went to Barnes and Noble and I was like keen on getting all the books. And I asked, like, "Where's this book?" And they're like, "Oh, it's in the self-help section." I was like, "What?
Yeah.
What does that have to do with good? What does that have to do with succeeding in show business?" And so I picked it off the shelf and I thumbed through it, and I landed on this one page, and I don't remember the exact words, but it said something like, "You can choose your emotional state," something to that degree. And this was like the first time that I ever heard this, because growing up with an addict, everything was very reactionary. Everything was suppress, 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 escape, 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 which is what I modeled with bulimia. And then it would just blow up and explode.
Mm.
And then you would be at the mercy of your triggers and your reactions. And so seeing in plain language that I could choose my emotions and my emotional state and how I thought like mind blown. And it was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And reading that book for the first time was seeing people communicate in a different language. You know they're speaking in a different language. You know they're saying things that they're communicating and hearing each other. You just speak that language yet. And I was like, I wanted to learn that language. And I realized I needed to learn the language of emotions.
Mm.
So I was able to go through this acting school and support myself in, growing my show business career. I didn't want to wait tables, so I found through acting. Actually, I found Pilates, and it was for the first time I had been on my recovering from an eating disorder, and searching out, like recognizing that certain environments weren't healthy for me. Like in the environment of being in a dance class was not healthy for me. The environment of being at the gym, I didn't know what I could do. I tried running. I couldn't run a mile to save my life back then. I literally couldn't run a block without having an asthma attack. And I was able to, like, so when I found Pilates, I was like, well, I know I need to be fit. I know I want to like working out. I just don't know how. And within 30 days, I saw results, not by trying to get, any sort of results, but I just saw results. I saw the tone in my body. I finally felt good in my body. And I was like, I have to teach this to help other people feel this good. And so I started teaching Pilates. It was just one of those things where I followed my curiosity. And as I was teaching Pilates, I had an opportunity to write my first screenplay, and I co-wrote that with the director of this film, and the film got greenlit and then produced. And there I was, like, feeling like I was living this dream, like I was serving in such a powerful way. I was finally in a space where I was loving my body. I was leading people to love their bodies as well, and I was having my Hollywood dreams fulfilled and my screenplay produced. Like I felt on top of the world. And yet still I was dealing with struggles with being choosing very poor partners for relationships. And it was through that cycle, though, that once the film got produced, it got picked up by Netflix and distributed by Lionsgate. And I was at the premiere and I was like, this is it. Like, this is like dream come true. And I was only 90% fulfilled. And the same was true with Pilates. I was working in Pilates. I had just started my own private studio, and I was only 90% fulfilled. I was loving parts of what I did, but other parts of what I did kind of bored me. And I loved parts of writing the screenplay, but other things I like wanted more control, or I wanted to see things differently, or maybe I wanted to produce. I wasn't quite sure what it was. And 2 weeks after the film premiered, I got a text from a friend of a friend, I got a text from my friend who was texting me about her friend who brought her son to the film, because when you write a movie, you get extra tickets, and I was passing them out like candy. So this child, this, like, and I say child, this like teenager, he was like 16. He came to the film. I remember seeing him. I was like briefly introduced to him, and I was like, hey, okay. I'd like had other places and other people and to meet, but I met him, and I remember him because that text 2 weeks later, my friend said, I just want to let you know your film changed that kid's life. And I was like, what? Like, this is a film. It's called Bro. I think it's still on Netflix. And it's like about the high flying, hard partying world of freestyle motocross, something that nobody thought I would write, like something that nobody thought I could write. In fact, when I did the press for that film, I had questions from female reporters asking me, like, did you only write the female parts? And I was like, no, no, I wrote the male parts too, the parts that included the sex, the drugs, the motocross, the like, I wrote those too. But it was so fascinating to see, like, that this kid transformed his life from watching this film. And I said, that is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to transform people's stories. I just didn't know how.
Mm.
And so I saw that it wasn't completely happening with Pilates. And that was when I had the opportunity to become a partner in an e-commerce startup. And we were going to take this back stretching device to market. And immediately I was brought on initially to be a consultant because of my Pilates background. And then I saw it and I said, I've always been very audacious with my career. So I'm like, I don't want to just be a consultant. I want to be a partner. Like, I see the value in this. And so for 2 years, I grew that e-commerce company with my business partner. We got it featured up in Times Square, like on the big giant billboards. Like, it was super, super exciting. And then 3 months before I was going to walk down the aisle to marry my husband and go off on our dream vacation because I had an e-commerce business that would support me, my business partner said he wanted to buy me out. And I was crushed. And then all of those fears that I thought I had dealt with, the fears of not enoughness, the fears of deserving, the fears of worthiness that I had mastered in my body from healing myself from a 10-year battle with bulimia. I'd mastered them with relationships. I'd gone through them with relationships. I'd never gone through them with business or finances. And that was when suddenly I had professionals or lawyers coming to share with me all the fears that I had inside of like, oh, you're too sparkly, you're too girly, you don't know enough, you didn't go to college, you are too young. And so suddenly all of these fears of worthiness, deserving, and enoughness, as I was fighting for our buyout agreement, were brought to light by professionals, and it crushed me. And so there I was on my honeymoon because we signed the buyout agreement 3 weeks before I walked down the aisle. I was on my honeymoon and I was like, what do I do when I get back? I didn't really want to go back to teaching Pilates. I had all of these passions. I loved writing. I loved marketing. I loved business. I loved bringing something to life. I loved, helping people with their relationships. I'd mastered the relationships in the body areas. Like I knew I wanted something that was a holistic business. I just didn't know what it was. And so I was brainstorming with my husband over way too many espressos. And I leaped off the couch and I said, crown yourself. And he's like, what's that? I said, I don't know, but that's the name of my company. And I immediately went to work in what I call productive procrastination, buying film equipment, hiring a web designer, getting a logo. And for a year and a half in my business, I made $0.
Wow.
And that's because my self-worth was so low and I was so crushed. I was so scared of rejection that I actually went back to teaching Pilates. I didn't trust myself with my own Pilates business enough because that going through that buyout process really shattered my trust and my belief in my ability to be a business owner. So I got a side job teaching Pilates for less than I had made when I initially started teaching 8 years ago. Like that's how low my self-worth was. And I had started in about a year, I kind of started doing like wellness coaching out of my car in between Pilates clients for $25 an hour.
Wow.
I had such low self-worth. Yes, low. Like now I charge $50,000 for 12 months. Like to
Yes.
think that that's where I started, I'm like, holy crap. So the ability to transform my own story, that was key. And for that year and a half, I was becoming more and more of a negative Nelly. I just had a crappy mindset. I had such I was complaining, I was blaming my former business partner for where I was blaming everyone that I could, and I didn't like who I was becoming. And then I found out that I was pregnant with my first son. And I said, this version of who I am is not going to be the mother of my children. Like, not at all, because the role of mother scared me way more than the role of business owner. And so I said, I'm going to figure out, I'm going to make this work. I know I can, I know it's a mindset thing. I knew it was a mindset piece. So I immediately got a coach. I knew I had to fast track the process. So I got certified in NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis. And within 3 months, I got my first $2,000 client. And then I got my first $5,000 client. And then I just grew my business from there. And it's
Oh, I heard all of that apart from the very last part.
Oh, I said, and now here we are in Australia, which has always been the vision for my husband and I, was to be able to live in cultures and raise them while traveling and have a business that supports it. And when we made that decision, like I had to make that, my husband's a voice actor and a heck of a relationship coach, but his relationship coaching business hadn't gotten off the ground. He was just predominantly like dependent upon his voiceover income. And so I had to say, like, I had to step up as being the like primary income earner. And It's been amazing. Like it's been such a journey just to think that just 4 years ago I like could not afford to take my family on to buy a hotel room, let alone like pay for our lifestyle.
Wow, what a story. Thank you for sharing that, by the way, Kimberly. And
Thank
I
you
have
so much, Victoria.
I have a question which might be difficult to answer, but it's kind of in the context of the nature nurture question. It's like the chicken and the egg question, right? Do you think you would be where you are today if you hadn't experienced what you've experienced? Like, is part of your drive who you are, or do you think you've learned that throughout your experiences?
Both. I mean, I think it's very much a nurture. Like studies show that about 90% of your programming is really set for the most part by the age of 6. And
Mm,
so going through the experiences of that, so and then the rest of our lives is spent sometimes reprogramming some of the things that we learned and looking at those patterns. And so many of the patterns that I learned growing up because of my situation, like that really gave me a lot of drive and a lot, and also in the power to see that stories can be transformed no matter what age.
mm,
Like I saw my dad at the age of 69 become sober off of alcohol, a 50-year addiction,
wow.
because after I staged his intervention. Like, and for the last 4 years of his life, because he died in January, and the last 4 years of his life, he was so proud that he had been sober because that allowed him to have a relationship with my son,
Mm,
something that never would have happened. And so it was just such a testimony to the power of transformation, and why I say like I've always kind of had this coaching ability because I was the 5-year-old who was challenging my dad's behavior. I
wow.
was I also learned sensory acuity at a very, very young age because when you're growing up with an addict, you're kind of on edge when they come home. Like, who's going to come in the door? Is it going to be sober, cool dad? Or is it going to be alcoholic asshole dad? Or is it going to be the stoner dad who doesn't really care? Is it like or is it going to be the manic pill popping dad with some like surprise purchase that he just spent, $5,000 on because why not? Like a giant mantle one time he brought home. Like you don't know who's coming home. And so it trains you to adapt your behavior at a very early age to say, okay, I know that to survive, I need to, or at least the perception is to survive. I need to, hide in my room, or I need to not voice my opinion, and so you start to see how you adapt your personality. And that's why as a skill set, like for a coach, like I can kind of see when a client is about to be like on the edge of a breakthrough, because I can see that and then I can adapt my questions to be able to pivot to allow for that. So now I use it as a superpower. How it didn't serve me was for years, and for those, I would say 10 years of my life, where I would be a chameleon and a people pleaser to whatever anybody else thought I wanted, or whatever I thought they wanted or needed from me in order for me to feel loved and accepted. I have to go long for me to get to a place of absolute self-acceptance, and it's still a journey, but like
Mm,
the journey to radical self-acceptance has been powerful, and really owning all of who I am rather than seeing it as like, oh, I need to chip away this piece. My mom, when I was dating, called me the runaway bride. So there was the scene in the movie Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts on how she would like adapt her eggs to whatever man she was dating or engaged to. And for me, I wouldn't adapt my eggs. I've been pretty straight up on how I like my food, but I would adapt. Maybe I wouldn't show my ambitious side, or I would hide how I like my quirkiness or my weirdness or my sense of humor, or I would try to be like uber sexy, or I would try to be like just muffled and toned back, or like good little wifey, and none of those ever worked. And that's why I say that my forever husband now is like he was my experiment in complete honesty, and I just like first I just, no bullshit. I said, this is basically who I am. This is what I've been through. Take it or leave it. And he loved it. He found it incredibly refreshing. And so that's been the foundation of our marriage for 9 years, or relationship for 9 years, married for 7.
Wow. I just want to acknowledge and honor your dad just before we just go over that. I just want to just send my love to you and everything that you went through with him, and how it was such a beautiful ending in the end with regards to him becoming sober. I think that's a really big deal to acknowledge. So I want to acknowledge that. And I think, hopefully you got that. Did you get that? The
Thank you.
connection's
Thank
not
you.
great, but
I did get that. Yes, I
okay,
did.
good. And the next thing I wanted to ask you is in regards to
Yes,
your
I did.
bulimia.
I received that.
Okay, good. In regards to your bulimia, what do you think helped you the most to, like, what was your steps to recovery? Because I'm sure it wasn't just an well, that's probably one of my limiting beliefs. You can't just wake up and be okay. Maybe you can. Like, can you share how you experience healing from that?
I think it was definitely a process, and I think that for me it was a process and was no longer a process. Like that's one of the things is I don't like in the, and I just had a big disagreement that I personally don't believe that if you are that you're in recovery for the rest of your life. Like the
Mhm.
who I was as my identity as a bulimic is no longer who I am today. Like it's a completely different person. I look back on that girl and I just want to give her the biggest hug for who she was because of how she saw the world. And for me, it started my process. The process going into bulimia was very much seeing disordered eating in my family. Like my dad, whenever he would try to get sober, he would do like a fast. So he would do like a 40-day fast or something. He would eat only pea soup. So, and then my mom, I still have to remind her to this day to like say something nice about herself. She just always commented on her body ever since she had gave birth to me, and she always compared herself to past versions of herself or what she looked like in her 20s and 30s. And she had
Mm.
me later, she had me in her 40s. And that seeing that and seeing the patterns of my mom having her struggles with eating and chocolate and sweets, and then my dad having his patterns, I didn't learn good behavior for eating. I didn't learn good resourcing. And we also had a really poor diet. Like my dad would drink like a 2-liter bottle of Coke and of Diet Coke and in a day, and probably had alcohol in it. But like it from drinking like Diet Coke and eating microwavable meals. So like even though my mom was always into health, in a way it was like she was into health and into vitamins, into supplements, and that's actually what started me with bulimia. Was one day I had started binging, and I always had weird eating habits, and my friends would comment on it. No, I'm just gonna skip lunch. I would just like skip food for periods of time. And um it was when and then I would go out and with my mom and I would like just binge. And that was when and it would always like cause my stomach to not feel good. And so I saw a commercial for vitamins and I thought, oh my, well, we have lots of vitamins. Let me take a handful of vitamins. I took a handful of vitamins and one got stuck in my throat. And suddenly that was when I purged. And it was for the first time I felt this like eerie peace and silence from all the noise that was going on in my head, all the judgments, all the doubt, all the fears, all the stuff that I wanted to suppress and repress. And I felt like I finally had like a safe space inside the bathroom. Um, and so that started the cycle, and I was 11. And from there, it didn't help that I was also advanced. So when I was 9, my teacher said, "Well, maybe you should stop eating at 4 p.m." And I was like, 4 p.m. I'm like up until like 9 o'clock at night and I have homework. And so there were all these like suggestions and patterns that I was exposed to at a very young age. And what I found is like, you think 9 or 11 is a shocking age, but like statistics show that the age 9 to 11 is a key age to just like love on your children if you're a parent, because that age is when most kids will turn to an eating disorder and to porn. And
Mm.
that was shocking for me when I found out the statistics, as I was in the process of writing my book that's coming out next year called Rule Your Body. And that so I went into the state of bulimia. I was using that as a crutch. I wasn't like fully bulimic until I went to high school. And then I was like super achiever, trying to get straight A's, trying to be perfect, really struggling with not being perfect and being, human. And and it was in that space that then I recognized that I'm doing this often and I have a problem. And I mentioned it. I remember I was like 16 years old, and I just decided to mention it at a family dinner, which was very rare. And I remember it because my family never had dinner together. Like we would have dinner like often our own things, we would do our own things, and then or like we would have dinner in front of the TV. Um, Never really bonding. And it was from that one time that we actually had like dinner at a table together that I just felt comfortable sharing. I said, I think I may have a problem. I'm starting I've been throwing up my food. And my dad goes, "Oh, I do that." And I was like, "Oh, okay. So, oh, all right." So I didn't quite know how to take it. And what happened, but my mom was concerned. And so I do remember I conversation. I walked up the stairs to go do my homework, and the upstairs house was not well insulated, and so you could hear like every footstep. So I'd gotten really good at sneaking across the hallway to go into my bathroom.
Mm.
And I went upstairs. I went into my room, and I was about to, and I guess my mom heard me open the door. I was like kneel in front of the toilet. I hear my mom barreling up the staircase, and she like pulls me away, pulls me off of the toilet and pins me down. And this is like visceral anger. I'm so mad at her. I'm so mad, just period.
Mm.
All of her emotions coming out, all of her fears and her hurt and her guilt and her shame, fears and my guilt. And just she ended up pinning me down on the floor and sitting on me. And she said, "I love you, Kim. I am not going to let you kill yourself."
Oh.
She recognized that an eating disorder was a slow form of suicide. And it was in that moment that I was like, okay, I know that what I'm doing is not working. I
Mm.
know I have parents that love me. They have their problems, but they love me. And I know I don't want to die. So let me see if I can find a better way. And so I started out initially with just looking at, well, maybe if I just did some restrictive eating that wasn't like, and so I made up all these funky food rules. Like if I eat this, then like I'm okay, and it'll be a non-throw up day. If I eat this, then that's when I would go to the bathroom and purge. And eventually, by about 6 months later, I read the book Skinny Bitch, that is all about veganism. And I thought, maybe it struck a chord with me of like animal cruelty and looking at that. Well, maybe if I stop eating animals and stop, consuming, maybe I can remove some of the cruelty, then maybe I'd be kinder to myself. And so I was a vegan for 6 years until my body literally said, "You're good. No more, no more." Obviously, my favorite food is steak, so I still eat steak. Because the only thing I craved for 6 years was red meat, and I'm an O blood type. O blood type. If you read Dr. Peter Diam's book on Eat Right for Your Type, those are really good with meat and veggies, and that's I eat predominantly meat, predominantly veggies, and then some meat. And but for those 6 years, I was very vigilant about being vegan just because I felt like my life depended on it. I felt like I needed to have those parameters of rules, and using vegan was a good excuse for me to be able to say that and then not have to justify any funky food rules. And so I just let that be what it is until I had started teaching Pilates, and then I felt started to feel really good in my body, and thus and then the eating disorder of the triggers, I started just questioning. I Because the beautiful thing is when once I started teaching Pilates, is that 10 different people with 10 different belief systems, 10 hours a day, 5 6. So what that does is it completely changed my environment. So the model of the world that I grew up in, I started to see other people surviving and thriving in different belief systems. And that shook my model of the world to be able to see, oh, well, they're obviously doing well. They're obviously doing something right. What if I did that? What if I believed that? What if I thought about my body that way? What if I didn't think about that? Oh, this person thinks like I do, and I'm like, oh, I'm not liking their results of how they're of the what they're achieving in their life or what they're receiving in their life. And so by just starting to shift my environment and then question my triggers, I just started to ask myself better questions. And I attribute a lot of this to being in a very emotionally intelligent acting class where we were encouraged to question what made us feel. And so I was in this constant state of questioning of like, oh, this makes me feel like I want to purge. Well, what makes me feel? What is that? Like, what is that emotion? And what's causing that emotion? What is the stimulus to that emotion? And that's why one of my favorite quotes by Viktor Frankl is, between stimulus and response, there is a choice. And that is the space that I started to navigate. And initially, when I first started to navigate, healing and changing my mindset around how I ate, my eating patterns and bulimia, like that space was, there was like, it was like this, it was tight. But eventually, through questioning, through asking better questions, through getting curious about, okay, well, when I feel hurt or when I feel overwhelmed, that's when I'll reach for like the giant bag of cookies. Okay, well, what's beyond that? What's actually causing the overwhelm? Is it my relationships? Is it my work? Is it do I feel like I'm living on purpose? I started really just asking myself more and more questions to acknowledge and recognize the emotions. And that's when I started to really pivot and change. And and simultaneously, because I was a Pilates instructor, I was also activating my parasympathetic nervous system. So
Yeah.
from a physiological standpoint, that's what I know now. I didn't know that that was going to be helping me with recovery from bulimia, but now, having studied trauma and breath work, and that experience of doing Pilates on a daily basis to train my parasympathetic nervous system to work properly, because prior to that, I just fight, flight, flee. I would just, that was where I lived,
Yeah.
versus allowing for that oscillation of periods of stress and then periods of rest and digesting. And that oscillation, that the ability to train my body from that physiological standpoint, transformed how I breathed. It transformed how I felt in my body. It transformed how I thought. And meanwhile, I was also eating very, very pure. So I had stopped, because I had become vegan. I had stopped eating a lot of the processed junk. I'd started eating a lot, like a lot more salads and soups, and choosing more healthier options, because that was what I was in my parameters of this identity of being a vegan. And once I'd gotten comfortable with that, I then eliminated gluten out of it, because after about 5 years of being a vegan, I had no energy. I was super cloudy in my thinking, and I had like complete brain fog all the time. And I was living off of uh, coffee and Rockstar energy drinks were the one like really crappy thing that I would drink. Awful. Um, and and that experience of being able to question and retraining my brain to question, I started to question what I was eating. And I started to question, like, I've had for 6 years this craving for a burger, like the 6 years of craving for meat. And at first I eliminated gluten from my diet, felt way better. And then I added back in just red meat. and just a little bit. And within 5 minutes of eating red meat, I felt transformed because by being vegan for 6 years, I'd become anemic. Um, but within like 5 minutes of eating a protein burger from In-N-Out, I felt amazing. And that showed me I built up the trust with my body to trust my body when she's full and trust my body to give me the insights as to what she needs to be fueled. And I remember because I was into pageants and in I was 22 years old and I had signed up for the Miss California pageant, Miss California USA. And I had worked my body into a space where I felt really amazing in my body. I did it healthily. I did it. I felt so toned. It was the first time I'd ever be doing a pageant in a bikini. I'd done pageants before that were more for scholarships, but this one was the first time in a bikini. And I remember the moment that I walked out on stage for the swimsuit portion, and 4,000 people cheered, and I'm on this brightly lit stage in a bikini, and I felt unbelievable. I felt amazing. And I literally could care less whether those 7 judges in the shadows thought I was worthy, deserving of a crown, because I knew in that moment that I had crowned myself. I knew in that moment that I was free forever from bulimia and that I had conquered that, and I had transformed myself into a whole new identity.
Wow. That is incredible. And I know we're coming up onto time. Are you okay for maybe another 15 minutes or you've got to go for the hour?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So,
all
because I have
good.
quite a few questions, I'm going to choose wisely. If someone feels that like they're stuck, which I know you and I know there's no such thing as actually being stuck, but it can feel very real to a lot of people. What advice would you give to someone who feels like stuck in their life with no way out?
Move your body. Start moving this body, because the feeling of stuckness is an emotion. It's like stuck emotion, and emotion needs motion. So by moving your body and breathing with it, whether it's exercise, Pilates, yoga, dancing, just being silly and like moving your body like a wacky person in your living room when no one's looking,
Yes.
like that will help shift and change the energy. One of my favorite things to do in the morning is I turn on music. Sometimes my 4-year-old will come in and want to dance with me. But I'll just do like dancing in front of the mirror. Like that's my get the movement flow in time. And it's different than my designated exercise time, because I just allow my body to feel how she wants to feel, and I allow for those feelings to come through. I give the emotions of any emotion that I'm experiencing a place and a space to breathe through and move. So first, move your body if you're feeling stuck. Second, once you've been moving your body, breathe and start to deeply connect with your breath. Feel the breath fueling your lungs, because sometimes when we're stuck, the breath is stuck as well. And it's stuck in the top third portion of our lungs, because when we're stressed, we're not really breathing deep into the base of our lungs and into our diaphragm.
Mm.
And so if you can start breathing and imagining the breath going down into the back and sides of your rib cage, that'll actually physiologically connect you deeper into your core, into your diaphragm, into your solar plexus chakra, where that's the center of your personal power. And it'll also help open up the rib cage and your heart chakra to open up that space and give it some space by just breathing. One of my I love the quote from Jay Shetty's book Think Like a Monk,
Yeah.
where he mentions that about that's the first thing you learn as a monk is basically how to breathe. And they say, well, that's what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, so you might as well focus on it. And we're not taught to breathe. Like we
Mm.
can survive three, I think it's like a certain amount of days without food, only 3 days without water, but only 3 minutes without breath. And so breath is key and important to really unlocking and opening up our bodies. So move, breathe through the movement. And then once you're moving and breathing, start asking yourself a better question.
Mm.
So if you're feeling stuck, there's probably a stuck story that's kind of on repeat. So instead, ask yourself a what or a how question. Because if you ask yourself a why question, which is what most people do that gets them feeling stuck, a why question is going to give you, it's going to direct your subconscious mind to give you all the answers as to why it is. So it's going to give you self-limiting beliefs, it's going to give you reasons, it's going to give you excuses, it's going to give you some past trauma, it's going to give you, that thing that happened in high school or that, experience when you were 6. Like it's going to give you all these reasons why. Why is a really good question when it's directed toward purpose and vision, and you're like, you start with that why toward like what is it you want to create. But when you're looking at like a stuck thing or a
Mm,
negative thing, you don't want to go with why. You want to go with a what or how question. What can I change? How can I think about this differently? What do I need to see that I'm not currently seeing? How can I rearrange this situation? What do I get to what new choice is this stuck situation allowing me to choose into? What do I need to make a decision on? Because a lot of times when we feel stuck, it's because we're actually not making a decision either.
mm,
So that's step number 4. So once you start asking a better question, then just make a decision. So much of our programming is geared around like right or wrong, and we're fearing making that wrong choice, that wrong decision. However, really the only wrong decision is staying stuck and making no decision. So just make a decision. If that decision is I'm going to move my body, if that decision is I'm going to send an email, if that decision is I am just I'm going to send a text that to my that question guides you to make a decision and then take action on that decision.
yeah, love those advices. Thank you. And
Sure.
one more before we go into your books, I would love to talk about that as well. I had a client say to me the other day, and I really want your opinion on this. I live by life happens for me and not to me. However, having been through a lot of trauma myself, I of course spent many years, why me? It's his fault. I'm like this. All of those stories. I communicated to her an opportunity to see her trauma as a gift. And she really is struggling to see it as a gift because her perception is if I see it as a gift, that's saying that what they did to me is okay. And it's not okay. So can you just like speak to that for a little bit?
Yeah. So one of the most insidious things that keeps you stuck in the past and in past trauma and from moving forward is blame. And there is there's a big difference between being a victim of an experience and being in a victim mindset.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm,
experience that happened, you were a victim of. I was sexually molested. I was a victim of that as a
mm,
child. I was a victim of sexual molestation. I chose to repeat that story to keep myself in a victim mindset, to continue blaming my dad, my past, my history, my experiences, because that was the story that I had gotten stuck on. That was the trauma cycle that I was in. The
mm,
only way that I blamed my dad for my 10 years of bulimia, he never shoved my finger down my throat. That was me. So when we're blaming someone else for for something that happened to us, yes, something happened. Yes, you were a victim of a circumstance.
mm.
Eventually, you have to make the choice, unless you want to keep blaming that person for all the bad that's currently in your life, because eventually, if you blame them for all the bad, as Tony Robbins says, you also have to blame them for all the good.
Yes.
And my question is, do you want to give them that credit? Like when I recovered from bulimia, I wanted my recovery to be mine. When I wanted my transformation to be mine, I didn't want it to be my dad's. He had his own journey, he had his own transformation that he needed to make. I wanted my recovery to be mine. And so the only way that I could actually own my recovery was owning the fact that I had made choices that were out of a victim mindset because I was stuck in a cycle of blame, which keeps you in a cycle of shame, which keeps you in a cycle of guilt, which keeps you stuck in that past trauma. So if you are actually looking to move forward and through that trauma to choose to create a new life. The beautiful, a victim is a that you can become a creator. Like the thing that happened for me that I created from that experience of being sexually molested when I was a kid was I was able to have a very powerful and candid conversation with my dad. That unlocked his own healing because my dad had been sexually abused as a child. And it had been a cycle that had repeated itself for generations in my family. And I said, by having the openness, by opening the door, it opened the door to his own healing. And from that space, in 2018, he gave me permission to share that experience. I said, I will never share that until you've passed. And just recently, I've started sharing that happened. But that allowed me to create my own forgiveness, to forgive him. It allowed me to see him through the eyes of compassion because he was just enacting, he was just repeating his own trauma. That's what happens with trauma is we will repeat it. What you resist persists. So by me choosing to stop seeing myself as a victim of that experience, I chose to empower him to start seeing himself as a victim, start empowering him to forgive. And that experience, he then, the ripple effect of that was that because that happened to me, I was able, in a crowd of 2,000 people, I was at a conference back in 2018. And in this conference, my mentor, Brendan Bouchard, said, I want everyone to gather into a circle to, oh, you know, Brendan.
Yeah. I actually
Yeah.
do. My
Yeah.
fiance was certified as high performance coach from Brendan, and I've gone through all his
Same
trainings and
here.
everything. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So we were there at the conference and Brendan said to like gather in a group and share your most trying experience. And it was the first time in a public group that I shared that experience because it was small, intimate. It wasn't going to be broadcast to the world, but I felt comfortable in opening up that. And I knew I was going to share this. And immediately, but as we were gathering into this group, I saw this one guy and I said, come on over. Because I don't know what it was about him. I just said, come on over. And as we were going through, it turned out that 3 people in our group had experienced sexual trauma as a child or as an adult. And this guy, I saw him. It was coming round robin. It was coming to him and he was going to share his experience. And I knew he was going to bullshit. I knew he was just going to say some made up, like my gut. And I looked at him. And for the first time, he admitted that he was raped when he was 12. And from that experience, I saw that because of what happened to me. I would never have been able to recognize that had I not had that. And there was another certified high performance coach who had also experienced sexual abuse. We took him outside and he helped him process through his breakthrough as a coach, looking forward, not dealing into the trauma, but being able to look forward at what this would allow him to do with this freedom, now recognizing that, allowing that shadow part of himself that he had felt so much shame and guilt around. We spent an hour with him and just talked him through and he felt better. And finally we got him to a place where he was like more lighthearted and felt like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. I called my dad and I said, what you did, I know you know it was wrong. I don't need to tell you that. What you did, I think we just saved a life. And I thanked him for that experience not because that what he did was not wrong, because it was, but what he did was able to transform me to be able to see that in others, to be able to help other people. And many of my clients have had sexual trauma as well. And I didn't know until just this like 3 months ago. I had a conversation with the guy again. We met up for a Zoom chat, like a meetup, and he said, "Kim, I want to let you know you saved my life." And I was like, "Yeah, you've said that before." He goes, "No, I've never actually shared this with you." He said, "I was planning my suicide for that night." That is life happening for you.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's a lot and so freaking powerful. Yeah, I'm speechless. Just thank you for being so open and honest. And I really hope that those that are listening who are maybe struggling to see it as happening for them and not to them, it's not saying that what the person did is okay, but it's finding the compassion and the empathy for why they did that, and then standing in your own truth and moving forward. So yeah, thank you. That is a great, absolutely phenomenal place to end the question in, Kimberly. But I would love for you to share about your book that's coming out in January. Is that correct? This next year?
It's yeah, it's coming out in January. That's a tentative release date, but yes, it is coming out next year by around January. That's the anniversary of my dad's death. January, February. My book is called Rule Your Body. It's about taking command of your health and your life and your choices and owning all of who you are and ultimately crowning yourself. And it's a process that I went through, the thinking process of the thoughts, the questions that I challenged, the beliefs, the old identity that I had when I was struggling with an eating disorder. That is every single step of how I was able to heal, and recover and change my mindset about my body, so that now, like, I look at my body and I have given birth. I'm to two beautiful humans, and never, after having given birth naturally twice, will I ever like not see the power that this vessel holds, especially as women. And that is the power that happens when you transform your story about your body, when you transform your story about your trauma, when you transform your story about your life. You have the potential and a powerful ripple effect to change people, and your story might just save someone else's life.
Yeah. Wow. Where can they connect with you? And are you taking on clients? How can they work with you?
Yeah, I am taking on clients. So if you love this conversation, if you want to dive deeper into this level of owning and embodying who you are and standing in your power, and building an empire and having your story have a ripple effect, then definitely just go to crownyourself.com and hit the button that says work with me, and I look forward to having a conversation with you.
Amazing. And I will obviously link everything below. And can we have the link to your TEDx talk as well, so I can put that in the notes?
Yes, I'm just waiting for it to come out.
Oh, okay.
It just happened like 3 weeks ago, and I'm just waiting for it to come out. So if you go to youtube.com/c/crown yourself, it will be in our playlist there, and I will definitely send it to you when it actually hits the interwebs. I'm just like, come on. I'm so excited for it to come out.
Oh, I cannot wait to watch it. And of course, I'll link everything, all of your links below as well. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, which is never ending. Our hearts are infinite with the infinite love we have. And thank you for your wisdom, for your time. It's been incredible. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. You are a beautiful soul, and I love connecting, and the fact that we can just connect from so far apart in the world and yet still feel so close and deeply connected.
It's amazing. Thank you. And have the most wonderful evening where you are. And much love to you.
Much love right back.
Bye-bye.